Hello there. This is Emily Muse, producer of Education Insights Focus on Behavior and the Behavior Education Connection. We are so glad you're here today. We have a great episode in store, but before we dive in, we do have a favor to ask. We would love your help in spreading the word about our podcast. So if you have enjoyed the content here, please feel free to share our shows and episodes with others who might enjoy them, and to make sure that you are subscribed and liking our episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. We can't say enough about how much of a difference that makes in helping us spread the word, and we appreciate your help. So, without any further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Education Insights Focus on Behavior podcast. We're here to talk about all things behavior in the world of education. We take the science of behavior and break it down for educators into easily implementable steps, and we're excited to spend some time with you. Get ready to talk through behavior, what works, what doesn't work, and how we can all improve our work in schools so we as educators can be more fulfilled and our students can be more successful.
Hello, welcome to Education Insights Focus on Behavior. I'm your host, Dr. Selena Layden, and I'm joined today, as always, with my co-host, Daniel Irwin. Hi, Daniel.
Hello.
And Dr. Daria Lorio-Barston. Hi, Daria.
Hi, everyone.
And as always, we have with us our producer, Emily Muse.
Hello there.
So as we're kind of reaching the end of the school year, and that comes at very different times for different people, but everyone's kind of meeting that spring fever and the end of the school year is coming. And so we thought we would spend a little time today just chatting about some of our favorite end of the year wrap up activities or things that teachers do in their classrooms. So I'll just open it up and ask, what are your favorite end of the year things?
So my favorite end of the year tradition is when students get an opportunity to write a letter to the next cohort of students coming in. So whether it is to a specific classroom, whether it is to a specific teacher, or whether it is something that they just do to write and pass it on to a friend who is in the grade below them, I always think it's lovely to see the reflections that students have on a year as a whole and what words of wisdom they deem to be important enough to pass along to the folks coming up behind them. So I always think it's a really lovely tradition that builds wonderful community.
Well, mine is much more straightforward. It's field day. You go outside, you do random weird races, and then you eat a snow cone. I have very fond memories of field day, and yeah, it's just like one of those little core memories of like you feel like summer's coming. You get that like whatever competitive spirit, fun, free day of school, quote unquote. That was always good for me as a child.
We did not have field day at my school growing up, but my kids have it. But get this, they don't have it at the end of the year anymore. They put it the day before spring break starts. And my conspiracy theory is they do it so you don't pull your kid early to go on spring break.
I mean, that's clever strategy, Selena. That's definitely a reinforcer to keep them potentially coming. And I will say, I feel like elementary does a better job at having field days than secondary. And I think we need to advocate for more field days at secondary schools.
100% agree.
Yeah,
100%.
my only thing that I don't like about the fact that they moved our field day is it's often still cold. And so they don't do all the water things and I don't know. It was very cold this year, let me tell you. It was very chilly.
Well, on the flip side, you could have field day when it's scorching heat, and then it becomes a safety concern too.
Eh,
So perhaps to be on the safe side, we should have one field day per quarter to just keep it going.
I'm sure all the schools would love that.
When you
Em-
said safety concern, I thought you were going to say stinky concern
Well, that's a thing too.
because
Tomato, tomato, Daniel. Tomato, tomato.
Emily, do you have a favorite?
I do. So one of the very first schools that I taught at in Virginia had a tradition on the last day of school every year. All the entire faculty, everybody went out to the bus loop and farewelled the bus. Like as the buses pulled away for the last time, everybody stood together as a group and waved and sent everybody off to summer vacation. And it was a great way to kind of come together as a group and celebrate that, another year had come and gone and everybody was off to hopefully fun and exciting things. And it was also very quick because there's always a lot of things that have to get done on the last day of school before teachers can then be off and be done. So it was a nice way to mark the occasion without kind of adding one more thing to the mix. So I always looked forward to that. And then I moved on to other buildings that didn't do that, and I missed it. So that was my favorite.
Emily, that is a beautiful tradition. And the joke at any school that I ever worked at was that if you wanted to see Daria Lorio Barston cry, you just show up for that tradition. Because while everybody else is waving goodbye with a big old smile, especially when I taught fifth graders, they wouldn't return to the same school again, right? So I wouldn't see them in the hall. They were going off to bigger, better things in secondary. And every time I tried to keep it together, and every time it was just waterworks. And so it was probably good thing that it was the last day of school because I don't think there was recovery from that. Selena, what about you?
So I have two. One is a little more sentimental, and then one is just fun. The sentimental one. So on the first day of school or the first week in elementary school, it's very common for kids to fill out the All About Me form. That's like, I'm this years old and I have these pets at home, and this is what I want to do this year. I've seen a couple of teachers then do that like near the last day of school, and then they have both. And I think that that's really sweet to be able to be like, look at who you were in September or August or whenever you start school, and now look at who you are in May or June or whenever you're ending this grade. Because I don't know that kids always see the growth that they have, right? Like, but being, however old you are when you start school, and then almost a year later, like those kids change a lot in that time. So that one I like a lot. The fun one that I thought was pretty fun, one of my kids' teachers on the last couple days of school, they had already taken the room apart and all the things that you do as you're packing up. And so she let them bring a blanket and a flashlight, and they had camping for the last couple days because they couldn't use a lot of the things that were in the classroom anyway. And so it was kind of a nice way to be like, nope, this is still a fun place to be, but I can still get my room kind of packed up like I need to get out of here.
I'm always amazed at creativity that the teachers come up with when they have to already turn in all the supplies, do all of the things, but the kids are still coming. I always love watching what teachers come up with. And I also love watching some of the lessons and the instructions occur because after all the tests are done and they have way more autonomy and freedom to do fun things, right? I think it's really cool to see. So the flashlights, the camping. I remember one year we had a brilliant teacher. This was during the pandemic. And so the students took a virtual field trip where they got to ride virtual roller coasters together. And it was just really cool to see how you can take an activity and adapt it and make it so much fun for the kids. So kudos to all the teachers who do the incredible work up until the moment that the buses pull out on the last day.
I've got another one, and it's on my mind recently. It's the senior walk where the seniors wear their cap and gown and go back through the elementary schools. Like I've still got a year, but like I'm going to be a mess. Like that's going to be my big cry day, big ugly cry at the elementary school day. But yeah, it's such a cool tradition. They get to see their old teachers, and younger kids get to be like, look at you know, in admiration at the older kids who are moving on. So very cool.
I had thought of that one too. I think that is kind of a cool tradition that a lot of schools have. So hopefully as the year is ending, and while I know a lot of us are thinking about all the things that come after the last day of school, which is a great idea too, we hopefully can start thinking about like how can we help make the transition between the last day of school this year and the first day of school next year a little easier for everyone, students, teachers, everyone involved. And so we're going to talk about some things today that as you're kind of starting to wrap up your year, to think about what might you be able to do that could just help ease that transition for everybody. So I'm just going to open it up. What are some ideas that you all have that teachers could do that could help the next year's staff that are going to take on these students?
I always found actual transition meetings to be really helpful. And yes, there are transition meetings that are a required part of an IEP for students, and it's a very formal process. But there are also transition meetings that I appreciated between the grade levels or between the schools to be able to kind of talk about these are the strengths of the class coming up to you, these are the needs, these are the things that worked really well, and these are the things that potentially flopped. And I always appreciated the authenticity and the transparency and the focus on what's working well and how the students are doing so that it's not a let's talk about the kids and their families meeting, but it's much more a constructive way of as a way helping other teachers have a shortcut into knowing what's effective and helping them understand the layout of the class coming in so that they can prepare much more efficiently and effectively for the students coming in. So my one thing would be to actually develop a system, whether it is formal required, whether it is informal and just structured within your school or between the two schools. And the second piece is come in with an agenda that focuses on the students' needs and their strengths.
Yeah, and you made a really important point that I definitely want to clarify. So we're not specifically just talking about students who have an IEP who are identified with a disability. There are formal processes that you may have to follow for students with disabilities, especially as they get older and the what I'm going to call capital T transition. We're really just talking about transition from grade to grade for all kids to make it a little bit better for everybody. And I think your idea of just sharing, these are the things that we have found that work. Understanding that these kids are going to change who they are over the summer and they're going to come back and those things may work great. We may have to adapt them a little bit, but you're not starting from ground zero. You have an idea of, I worked through some things, and on the whole, these are some things that I think are really helpful for you as the next teacher to know about.
I saw a good example of that when I was doing my admin internships, and it was a process in which the principal had set up a grid as they're looking into who's going to be in what class next year. They were getting feedback from all the current teachers about students that might pair well together, students that might need more support in certain academic or behavioral areas, and really organizing and using kind of these name cards all over this big thing to kind of get everybody's input on how to match the classes the best based on student need and strengths and all of that. It was a really cool strategy to get that real input, not just sort of like laying out a schedule and off you go.
And Daniel, that also works really well when we're looking at different classes and making sure that they are equitable, right? Because a lot of times we have teachers who are really great at their craft and their classes end up being a bit disproportionate with pick a need, any need, right? Whether it's an academic, whether it's a behavioral, whether it's a social or emotional. And I think it is helpful for us to be mindful about how do we create a class that is going to work well together. And also, a teacher is going to be able to provide all the supports that they're able to provide. And so, having those systems in place is really helpful both for students and for teachers.
Totally agree. And um, maybe along the same vein, maybe not, but really looking at as a teacher, as if I'm a kindergarten teacher, um, do I have the time to kind of go and see what's happening in preschool and vice versa? As a preschool teacher, do I have the time to go and look and see what's happening in a kindergarten classroom? And really sort of doing some in-depth ecological assessments of what the expectations are day one, and have we done that in preschool? Are we holding kids to too high an expectation in kindergarten day one? And kind of balancing that out and thinking about what can shift in my classroom now at the end of the year to help prepare for that, whether it's moving to kindergarten, middle school, high school, whatever. Um, that matches, that sort of sets the stage for what's coming next. Those independent transitions that start happening in middle school, have they had the opportunity in fifth grade to be able to do some of that and show some of those skills? But also thinking about kind of those expectations and moving from a very student-centered, choice-based preschool setting into kindergarten. We have routines, and that kind of thing. So, really knowing where they're going can really help that end of the year planning and activities for getting them prepared.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think would be really awesome is to share some of those things with families because I think a lot of times families will say, "What can I do to prepare my kid for third grade, 10th grade, whatever it is, whatever the next year is?" And I think if you had a list of, well, in third grade, these are things that they're going to have to start thinking about. They don't have to be perfect on day one, but just things to start thinking about. Maybe you can talk about them at home. Maybe you can help your student prepare for these things. And so families can have some of those resources as well.
That's a brilliant idea to support our families and make sure. You're welcome, Selena Jasmaov. Thank you. And so it would be very, very helpful to the families. And to that point, I believe we could do a better job of preparing our students as to what the next grade is going to look like and how they can advocate for themselves and some of the skills that they have picked up in our setting, how to help them generalize that to a different setting. At times, we are really well intentioned as teachers, but we have a tendency to say silly little things like, well, when you go to middle school, no teacher is going to care that you forgot your pencil. Or, well, when you're in high school, no one's going to give you a copy of the notes. And I worry that we do a disservice to our colleagues when we do that because we almost prime our students to think that the middle school teachers or the high school teachers are these cold-hearted individuals that won't let you do anything, right? I wonder if we would be better served to help students say, when you go on to the next grade level, remember you are expected to show a bit more responsibility. This is what it's going to look like. So let's problem solve now. What will happen should you forget a pencil? Should you forget your notes? Should you, insert whatever the behavior that the student could be dealing with? Because I believe we need to prepare our students and help them grow without sacrificing the reputation of really kind and well-intending teachers from the next grade or the next level that students are going to.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And I think on the other side of that, I keep saying I think, um, on the other side of that is sort of empowering students. We look at the I'm determined good day plan, and we look at the one pager and giving them that affirming language of here are the things I'm good at and here are the things I need, and rehearsing those things, and practicing those advocacy skills, depending on what students need and understanding who to ask, when to ask, how to ask, and advocate. It is sort of that behavioral rehearsal of if and when this comes up, this is how you do it. Let's practice it and be ready to go. Because we don't know what they're walking into, right? We don't know sort of a teacher's style, their classroom management. So there's a lot of variables that are similar, but also a lot of things that are going to look very different, regardless of whether they're moving into middle or high school, but even just to another teacher and how they handle classroom disruption or how they handle setting up routines and procedures in the classroom. So, giving students that way, that strength in advocacy and understanding where they are, what they need, can prepare them for a variety of different environments.
And Daniel, I know it's not always possible because I recognize that many a time we're still forming class lists up until the day before students enter the classroom. But I wish there was a way that students could meet their next teachers a little bit earlier, right? I wish that their next teacher or the whole grade level of teachers could pop into a whole grade level and say, hi, friends, this is a little bit about ourselves. We're so excited to have you next year. I think we have a lot of these informal transitions between the grade levels or even the schools because I believe that students talk a whole lot amongst themselves. And especially if you had an older sibling, all of a sudden at the end of the school year, you become a really cool kid that everybody's coming to for intel about what the future holds for you. But I wish we had a more structured way to help students become or remain excited about the next grade level. And so, whether that looks like teachers coming in to just chat with students, whether it means like an informal ice cream popsicle social in the summer where students can just connect to the teachers, but whatever we can do to ease that transition, to lower the potential anxiety for the students, and to make more excitement generated, I believe would be really beneficial for everyone involved.
I always think it's funny when kids are like, "Oh, I don't want to get Mr. Irwin. Everyone in his class failed the SOLs." And then they're like, "Oh, I know I want to get Miss Muse because she gives out ice cream every day." Like all these things get made up, and kids get excited, disappointed, whatever, based on who knows what. So I think that idea of getting together and meeting them and learning more about the classrooms can maybe counteract a summer of anxiety of getting Mr. Irwin, who doesn't teach anything, but who knows? Who knows like where the information comes from or who made it up or how true it is. But just being able to like like you said, meet, greet, get to know, make a connection can counteract some of that.
Yes, Daniel, the urban legends that go around all the teachers in the schools, right? Who knows where they originated? Some of them have a dose of truth, some of them do not, but it's funny. Um,
Before we move
Switching.
on, I do have to laugh though, because you bring up this idea of, teachers saying things like, well, in middle school, this is not going to be tolerated, or when you get to high school, that persists all the way up into college. And being a college professor, I laugh at what some of the high school teachers say, and I'm like, that's not true. That's not how that works. You know darn well when you went to college, that's not how that worked either. So, I don't think adults are immune from continuing these urban legends either.
Oh, Selena, 100%. It's like that famous meme, right? About you have to be responsible and you can't get away with this dress code in college. And then the next picture is college and the whole class is wearing pajamas to class, right? So it's um and I know what's at the heart of this. I know that people are trying to relate to the students their desire to help them become a little bit more responsible, but I think the intention and impact don't really match up there. I did want to pivot the conversation a little bit and speak to all the wonderful tools that teachers have a tendency to use for instruction and thinking about the opportunity to help those tools move forward with a student. So I think about all the documents from I'm Determined website and the page, whether it is the Good Day Plan, whether it is About Me one pager, or the things that we tend to use instructionally. If we can hold on to them or make copies, I think it would be such a powerful thing to relate to the next teacher or the next set of teachers, and even better, if we can help our students be the ones who can share those documents about themselves and making sure that they remember that if something was a helpful tool, then they can be the ones to introduce it to other teachers if other teachers don't know, for example. And so just being mindful about reflecting practitioners and educator and thinking about what really, really worked for which student as far as tools that can be passed along.
So, with that, I think what we should really encourage teachers to do as the year is starting to wrap up and wind down is just think about some of those strategies that might help next year's teachers and the students that you have make those transitions that are going to be just a little smooth, just a little less anxious for everybody. So, with that, I think that brings us to our resource for the day. And actually, we're excited because Emily is going to share that today.
I have the resource. So, this particular one comes to us from the Training and Technical Assistance Center, TTAC. at Virginia Tech. And as a part of their overall behavior change site, they have a section called Transitioning the Plan. And it includes several different tools really about what we've been talking about. So things like transition interviews that teams could use to interview each other, current year to future year, to impart some of the knowledge that an existing team might have about a student, to strategies for support, transitioning a behavior support plan that might be in place for a student. And one of the things that I really like that they have available here are adult assistance charts. Secondary and elementary versions are available, and they're just a quick place to jot down where a student may have some adult assistance needs, so that way next year's team is aware of those. And they have some really great items on those sheets that I don't know that I would have thought of in the moment. So it's definitely useful to communicate that ahead of time. So on the first day of school, new teams are not figuring things out for themselves. In that way, they have some knowledge to pull from previous teams. So the link is in the show notes. Click explore. And most, if not all of the downloadables on that site, you can save a copy and use for yourself and share with others as well.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode. Daria, Daniel, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
Emily, thank you for keeping us straight and sharing our resource today.
Thank you.
And we will see you all on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Education Insights Focus on Behavior. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can join the conversation by emailing us at cbis@odu.edu, visiting www.cbisva.org, or following us on Facebook, Instagram, X, or Blue Sky at CBISVA. Special thanks to the Virginia Department of Education for their support of this project.